Hello and welcome back everyone to Blender Geometry Nodes workshop for Jungle Vines. In the last lesson, we left ourselves off by setting ourselves up with values for the scale. And now we're going to continue on and make sure that we scale it down in regards to when it reaches the endpoints, the leaves would be much smaller. So the way we can do this is if we go back, we have sample curve. Through the sample curve, we can grab ourselves the value of the width basically of the curve. So for us to do that, we're going to make use out of this. Basically, we're going to input a radius value into here, and then it's going to output ourselves with the value of a radius throughout the curve, basically through each given point. So let's do that. We're going to hit Shift A. We're going to search for radius like so, and we're going to add this to the value just like that. Then afterwards, for the value, we can simply multiply this after. If I were to search over here, I'm actually going to make this probably smaller, or actually I do want to keep this a little bit higher up like so, and I'll just drag this down like so. And we want to grab the value and put it next to the scale after we add everything in together. So let's go ahead and do that, and you'll realize that it doesn't actually work quite as well just yet. Let me just go ahead and show you why. I'll go ahead and multiply this value like so, and I will grab the value over here, just add it like so. Make sure we have this cleaned up a little bit like that. We're going to do more cleanup in a bit, but for now that's going to be good enough. All right, so now that we have combined it like so, you'll notice that all the leaves disappear. The reason being is that we are calculating the radius after the original curve. So here we're just getting the value from the sample curve. But if we go back, this is where we set the original curve itself, and this is where we set the radius. So we need to grab the information beforehand. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to, instead of grabbing this curve from here, we're going to firstly apply the curvature radius. So all it's going to do is just going to give us the right information for the leaves. And actually the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to grab this entire setup like so. I'm going to move it to the side just like that. We'll combine these two together since I know that it's coming from the set position. So curve length and sample curve will just go ahead and hold Shift right click and drag it across to get both of them off like that. Now I'm just going to connect, instead of connecting it from the set position, I will connect it from set curve radius. This will give me the right information. I will go ahead and just move it off to the side a little bit, like so. And going to go ahead and do that, like so. Just going to move this a little bit more to the side, just like that. All right, so now we're going to get ourselves the right information, hopefully. Let's go ahead and look. So set curve radius. We're plugging it directly into the curve, sample curve and curve length. It should give us the right values. So as we get closer to an end, actually we'll increase the density a little bit more. There we go. So as we increase, as we approach the end bits, you can see the leaves are getting smaller, which is exactly what we want. One downside of this is that if I were to increase the density even more, we'll notice that once we get to the very end, they might be a little bit too small. They might be a little bit too small for overall setup. The reason being is that as it gets closer to the value of 0, which gets to the very end, they end up being very, very small. So like this part over here. So what I'm going to do to fix this situation is before I add in the value, which would be over here, before I add in the value from the radius, I will just simply add a maths node to add a 0.1, and that will just make sure it doesn't reach the 0. Or actually, instead of that, I will use clamp. Clamp is also very nice when it comes to certain mathematical equations, or making sure that it basically never reaches 0. So right now the minimum value is set to 0 to 1, for example, and that's going to give us overall setup, or how we reach the minimum and maximum values. For in regards to the scale, if we have a look at it for the vines, we can in a way reach a maximum value of 1 or even go past that with our setup. But as you can see, once we go past a certain value, not even reaching 0.5, we get crazy values. So we're pretty safe to say that we're not going to reach any values above 1. So we don't need to worry about the value of 1 itself for the maximum value. But for the minimum value, we can set this up to be something like 0.1. And that's going to make sure that it's never reaching the value that's right under it. So actually, I will show you with more density of the leaves even. So I'll set this to 4. There you go. So we have these leaves at the very end. And if I were to set this to 0, we can see them disappearing. But if I were to set this to 0.5, we can see that they're being always set to a minimum value of 0.5, which then gets multiplied by this afterwards, all the values for the scaling. So it's a very nice type of thing to use. For this case, I will make use out of, I think 0.2 is going to be great for this particular setup. These tiny leaves do look quite nice, I reckon. Maybe I'll set it to 0.3. It really is down to a personal preference in this particular case. And also, it might be down to the type of leaves that we're using. So for example, leaves A, we have these kind of shapes, these kind of forms, but leaves C, we have a more broken up type of leaves. So they might want to clamp even further to avoid those kind of hardly visible type of small leaves. But these chunky ones at the leaves A, they're quite perfect for the clamp to be set as minimum value of 0.3. So that's the reasoning behind it. And all in all, it's looking pretty nice. All right, so we're pretty much done with the leaves. We're now going to move on to setting ourselves up with a material for the vines themselves. Since the leaves, they already came with the default material. We don't really need to do anything with them. They're just using the material directly for the collection. But again, for the vines themselves, they're still kept as white. Even when we do enable the material mode, you can see that there's nothing happening. And we need to make sure we fix that. So yeah, that's going to be in the next lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.